Good morning, there you go. Good morning, colleagues. I would like to bring this session to order and welcome you all back for another day of hard work. Just before we get started, I just wanted to once again thank you all for your efforts yesterday. I think members and observers were all generally very good about being very focused and brief in their interventions, and I think that that was very helpful in moving the agenda forward. As you know, we have a very full agenda, and we have a lot to get through today, so we're going to have to work very efficiently and collaboratively, I think, to make it through our agenda without having to go into options that I don't think any of us want to do. It would be nice to be able to finish more or less within the time we've allocated for this meeting. So let's work towards that. As said yesterday, I propose to start off the day finishing off our discussion on the report on item 2.4, the progress report on the implementation of the FAO action plan on AMR and the proposal for a new action plan for AMR 2021-2025. So I'm just asking the Secretariat to call it up on the screen. And it's just a few seconds, I guess, until we do that. Maybe while you're waiting, I'll just remind that the idea is after we do this, we will also finish up the two outstanding summary documents, summaries of the discussion we had yesterday, item 3.2, sustainable dryland agriculture, and item 2.11, enabling smallholders and family farmers. And then we will move to item 3.1, the strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity, just to give colleagues a heads up so that they can organize themselves for the morning. A brief pause while we wait for the summary to come up. There we go. Okay. So I think where we had left things yesterday was, yes, we were on, we had just sort of started our quick run through and had arrived at paragraph 2, I think. Maintaining, yes, and we had, and the last sort of change I had suggested was the change from particularly in the wording, particularly in developing countries and economies of transition. So that's gone in as a proposal on my part. Then we have predictable funding through multi-year contributions by. Okay, so I guess there's two proposals in paragraph 2, predictable funding through multi-year contributions by donor countries or increased extra budgetary resources. My suggestion would be increased extra budgetary resources, including multi-year contributions by donor countries, just to leave the option for extra budgetary resources from sources other than donor countries. So including multi-year contributions by donor countries. Or I wonder if we could just leave it, well, let's put donor countries because that was the proposal, but perhaps it's better even to just say multi-year contributions. So then we can delete that reference to multi-year contributions. No, we keep maintaining, that's set, maintaining core resources and predictable funding, or rather that's the proposal. So just delete through multi there. And the square bracket, delete that, yes. And then the square bracket. And the square bracket at the end of countries. And then we leave example, the multi, I don't think that's the right term, but I think we know what we mean, the multi-stakeholder trust fund, multi-donor trust fund. Trust fund as 2 words. To support us. And then I think we have paragraphs 1 and 2 with some suggestions from me on what it might look like. I'll just do paragraph 3 and then I'll open the discussion for paragraphs 1, 2, 3 for reactions to these changes. Well, actually, I will now open the floor for discussions on 1, 2, 3. I would welcome suggestions from colleagues on how we address this phasing out of the use of antimicrobials as growth promoters, which is the only outstanding one there. So the floor is open and I will give the floor to Germany. Germany, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor, and good morning to everyone. So I would like first to comment on para 2 and your suggestion actually that you just made in regard to the budget. And let me say again that we are happy if the reference to the multi-year is going to be deleted, if we remain with saying that maintaining core resources and increase extra budgetary resources will be in the text. This is also in line with the agreed language when it comes to the PWB actually, because if we look at that, then we do know that the agreed language in regard to resources and expenditures by FAO for programs and activities that are coming from the approved PWB, then the agreed language is core budget and extra budgetary contributions. So we would be happy with the suggestion made by you just a minute ago. In regard to the phasing out, I would like to again explain a little bit what is behind this. So first of all, it is really globally recognized that the widespread use of antimicrobials for growth promotion is neither a prudent nor responsible use of antimicrobials. And there is an extensive body of scientific literature on that, which has developed over the last decades, showing that the use of antimicrobials for growth promotion can trigger AMR, and that therefore such use cannot be considered as responsible. So we have heard by the end of yesterday evening a lot of support for that also by other countries in the chat and also on the floor. And I'd also like to remind the committee that FAO Conference Resolution 4/2015, and that was also mentioned in the chat yesterday, referred to this agreed language, and I quote now, prevent the unnecessary use of antimicrobials, including the phasing out of antimicrobials as growth promoters. End of quote. And then there has been also a recommendation that was made by the global tripartite, WHO, OIE, and FAO, as part of the UN Interagency Coordination Group on AMR last year. And there they have been calling countries to phase out the use of antimicrobials for growth promotion, consistent with guidance from the tripartite agencies and Codex Alimentarius, starting with an immediate end to the use of antibiotics, categorized as the highest priority, critically important antimicrobial agents on the WHO list of critically important antimicrobials for human medicine. So probably what would help if with the amendment, including phasing out of the use of antimicrobials as growth promoter, we continue after the comma with a short clarification, which then would help probably the committee, consistent with guidance from the tripartite agencies, WHO, FAO, OIE, and Codex Alimentarius, which would then make the reference really clear in regard to this point. And that is it for the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Germany. I think just as a detail, there's probably supposed to be parentheses around WHO, FAO, OIE, would be my guess. I'll turn the floor now to Brazil. Brazil, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Good morning to you, to everyone. I'd like to start by thanking Germany for the efforts and the explanations that are already of our knowledge and do not add much to the discussion and to the efforts to solve our specific problem here. First of all, I'd like to remind that your summary, of course, has to reflect what discussed during the interventions of member countries in the COAG. Second, I do not recall much insistence in tripartite and in this specific point during the discussions. Third, and most importantly, some countries, a good number of countries, I recognize, insist in keeping this, but other also a considerable number of countries coming from different regions also insist in not having this specific reference. So as to spare us time, I understand that we have to reach a consensus, and if we are split in this specific aspect, the only consensus is removing the text, because very frankly, we are going to insist, and I guess other countries with the same position of us are also going to insist. So we are going to use, if not waste, our time this morning discussing this matter that wouldn't help much coming to a conclusion. So I would appeal to countries and specifically to you, to other countries through you, and to you specifically, since the summary is coming from you, that we spare our time and use better in order to advance our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil, for those comments. And certainly I am in agreement that at this point we should be focusing on how we can, from a consensus perspective, come out with wording that reflects the discussions at the committee. So I would ask if members have proposals that we focus sort of on the text. We did have a discussion on the substance of this as part of our discussion, so I don't think we need to necessarily go back through that, but if we can be very focused on what might helpfully address the concerns and the best way to reflect that discussion in a way that we can arrive at consensus on, I would appreciate it. I give the floor to Chile. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. we would like first to start with the paragraph number 2. We agree with the proposal expressed for Germany in terms of the budget. And then moving to paragraph 3, we would like to really support what just Brazil says, because we already said that this agenda item has taken a lot of time in this committee. We know that we are late in the agenda and we have a lot of several other important subjects to discuss. As Brazil expressed, there is no consensus about this, and we can spend the whole morning talking for this from one side or another, and we are not going to get into consensus. Because, as Germany mentioned, this subject is in many other forums from the tripartite, like Codex Alimentarius. And last week was the Codex Alimentarius Commission meeting, number 43, and we spent an entire morning in the plenary discussing this agenda item, and we didn't get into consensus. Actually, we're going to have another meeting on the 12th of October only for this. So, and Germany also mentioned that is worldwide recognized that the use of antimicrobials as growth promoter is a non-responsible use. So I think in the first line, when it says the committee underlined the important FAO chair responsibility in promoting prudent and responsible use of antimicrobial in food agriculture sectors, we are saying that the effort of FAO should be phased in promoting those responsible use where the use of antimicrobial as growth promoter is not included. So we think the second line, that including the phasing out, is redundant, and also, as Brazil expressed, doesn't reflect the entire discussion. Because we have, if we want to reflect the discussion in this summary, then we will have to start putting some countries think that including the phase it out, and some countries think this or that, in order to reflect how was the discussion during the session. So with that, I would like to say that we support what Brazil just says of erasing this text that is between brackets and continue with the agenda. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chile. I'll give the floor to Norway, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. Want to say that Norway supports the EU on paragraph 3, and we want to thank the EU for finding the reference documents regarding what was or how we want to reflect the discussions that we had. I think it's also important that we take note of the guidance from the conference and the conference resolutions, and therefore, since the phasing out of antimicrobials is already highlighted in the conference resolutions, I don't see why we cannot also highlight that in the summary of our discussions, as we have already several interventions have mentioned this issue specifically, and it is really important part of the prudent and responsible use. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. I'll give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, we're getting some feedback. We don't have any suggested text additions or changes to paragraph 3, other than to say that we also agree with Chile and Brazil that the first sentence really does reflect on what was discussed, and the second edition that's in brackets does not reflect what consensus of the group. So, thank you.
Thank you, United States. I've asked to look up the conference resolution, as I wondered if that might help us find some wording that might work out. I see a number of requests for the floor. I'll give the floor to Germany. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I'd also like to thank everyone that is engaged in this discussion, to the distinguished colleagues of Brazil, Chile, the United States, and also Norway. So let me try maybe one proposal that probably will help to, before we write including, if we say discussed. So in order to make sure that this committee discussed the including phasing out, or discussed the phasing out of the use of antimicrobials. Yeah, because I mean, we cannot deny that we are discussing it, so probably that would be of any help. And with the reference that then follows, it just takes into consideration other fora and also other discussions that are definitely going on. And I mean, tripartite FAO is part of it. And I would find it a little strange to deny that. So if we could, let's say, reduce it to the fact that we discussed at least this issue, that would, I think, be something that COAG could commit to. Maybe this far for the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Germany, for the suggestion. So, Secretariat, I guess that would be replacing including, delete including, and replace it with discussed. So I guess it would be and discussed, the phasing out. And then perhaps instead of, if this isn't Germany's suggestion, but perhaps instead of consistent with, we need something like and noted the guidance from the tripartite agencies. That would be my suggestion. But of course, subject to views. I will give the floor to Cameroon.
Madam Chair, thank you. Good morning, and good night, wherever you are. Well, this reminds me of in this para 3 of so many discussions we had in Codex Alimentarius. I can take the example of the ractopamine, which took so many years to conclude because of the same argumentation that I'm hearing now. And I personally think it's going to be very difficult for us to achieve a consensus at this point in time. Because for those who have some background of the discussion of such discussions, they could be endless. So what I will really plead, and I know that beside the fact that we are putting a Codex Alimentarium and WHO, FAO, and OIE at the same level, we should be mindful of the fact that Codex Alimentarius has 2 parent bodies, WHO and FAO. So when we cite the 2, Codex is included, but whatever, if we want to be specific, that's fine. So my humble submission is that we leave the text the way, the original text as it was, to avoid, this kind of quarrel that we are in now. So I would suggest that we delete everything which is in red in that first part. And that's my suggestion. It's a submission that else, even in the drafting committee, they can't resolve it. I'm talking from experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameroon. And I would certainly agree that we need to fairly quickly find a way out of this or resign ourselves to devoting the rest of the day to it. So I think if we can find a way out of this impasse sooner rather than later, that will be very useful for the work of the committee. I will give the floor now to Brazil, followed by the Philippines.
Thank you very much again, Madam Chairperson, for giving the floor for the second time, reacting to Germany, which is also for the second time proposing. I would very much appeal again to everyone, to you, that we hear the voice of experience of our colleague from Cameroon. It's the only solution out, in my opinion also, is deleting this part, because even though if we are going to work with the proposal coming from Germany, discuss it, if we could agree that was discussed, we have to add that without any... Oh. Sorry? Hello?
I think that was interference on the line. Please proceed.
I was saying that if we keep on discussing, which is not my expectation for this morning work, is if we keep on discussing, coming from the proposal of Germany, including discuss it, we have to add without any conclusion. So we're going to keep discussing and discussing. And frankly, I would like to avoid this kind of discussion and use better our time for discussing very important pending items on the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. I'll give the floor to the Philippines.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone. On paragraph 2, we'd just like to perhaps make or suggest some rearrangement to say that and called for predictable funding before maintaining core, and called for predictable funding through maintaining core and increasing extra budgetary resources. Then the rest could go away and just proceed to support its implementation. On the paragraph 3, yes, in principle, it would really be as practiced not only in this committee but in other fora as well. It would be difficult to add in something that did not gain consensus in the discussion. Therefore, we would also be appealing for flexibility that would be that the added phrase be deleted, and we retain the original one because, as also explained, I think, by Chile, there's already a call for promoting prudent and responsible use. And this could possibly include the phasing out of the use of antimicrobials, but this is an ongoing discussion. And yeah, as she mentioned also, it took the whole day last Saturday to discuss this even in the Codex Commission and the work of the task force on AMR. That's why it might be as well prudent as well for us to reconsider that, because otherwise another option which were used before several times before is there may be footnoting of those who had made reservation or has opposed this concept, which of course is not desirable, but that's an option. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Philippines, for both of those suggestions. Just before I move to other speakers, Just like I've got the resolution here. Unfortunately, I only have it in paper, so I'm relying on scanning it, but I don't actually see a reference to phasing out of antimicrobials as growth promoters. I had thought I'd understood Norway to say that it was in here somewhere, but now that I'm looking at it and remembering the discussion, I recall in that process we also discussed it and concluded we would not be able to reach consensus on it. If I've missed it somewhere.
2019. I didn't think it was the 2015 one.
No, this is the 2019 one, yeah. The 2019, the most recent one. So it doesn't look like there was any consensus on that point at our most recent resolution. I'll give the floor now to the Russian Federation.
Madam Chair and colleagues, good morning. This is an interesting discussion on the third point, and we would like to support the proposal made by Germany and leaving the formulation that has been proposed by Germany. And for the sake of consensus, we could also maintain the proposal that was made regarding the words discussed and noted. We think that that is a soft formulation, and I think we could retrain that and achieve consensus. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Russian Federation. I give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you and good morning, Madam Chair, colleagues and the interpreters. The UK aligns with the comments made by the EU and Russia. We also want to emphasize that a number, including us, a number of members mentioned the issue around growth promoters, and it would not be a true reflection of the discussions at committee if this was omitted. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, UK. I give the floor to Norway.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to clarify, we did not refer to the conference resolution from 2019. And I believe it was the European Union that made a reference to the previous conference resolution from 2015. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. I have the 2015 one now as well. It's not jumping out at me on the page. Okay, well, I think we're at an impasse. We have two proposals on the table. One is in paragraph 3, one is to simply not include any of this proposed wording, and then the other is to include it. So I think in the interest of time, let's move on from here and continue on with the remaining paragraph. If we can scroll down and see if at least we can get these done. So paragraph 4 seems to be, and there seems to be no objection there. And here we had some disagreement still among members in terms of the inclusion or not of this final part of the sentence, recognize the need for a greater exchange of experience and knowledge of best practices in the implementation of the action plan. If my recollection is correct, I think it might have been less about the content and more about the placement. And the concern that it was not necessarily linked to the first, the first point about the importance of awareness of the initiatives. So perhaps I can suggest we have the first sentence end at an area of ongoing focus and full stop. and then start a new sentence there and say the committee also, or the committee further, or also recognized. I'd leave it to Gabby. Further recognize the need for a greater exchange of experience, and then remove the final close brackets. So I will take comments on paragraphs 4 and 5, if there are any. Seeing none, I think then, I will give the, I will give the floor to Cameroon, followed by Germany. Cameroon, please go ahead.
Madam Chair, in as much as I appreciate this new para, I am a little bit, I will advise that we should not, this is the report of the committee. So, welcoming management advice, and for FAO, we don't even speak of management, we speak of secretariat. I'm not so much comfortable with that. We can say the committee took note of the advice, not to mention who did that advice, because of the advice, that awareness, because this is the report of the committee, not the report of the secretariat. So I don't even know what we call here management. So it's who is manager? Is it within the COAG? Is it within FAO? What is that? So it could be confusing. So I prefer the wording without that. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameroon. I think that that's an improvement. So I think before moving down the speakers list, well, I'll leave it as such. I had 2 additional speakers, so I'll give the floor now to Germany.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to propose in paragraph 4, in the last sentence, to change a little bit the wording on ingredients. So when we're writing to explore alternative local ingredients, I would like to see if it is possible to rather say explore science-based natural ingredients to reflect also better the food safety aspect in this, but that's just a proposal to see if it would be acceptable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Germany. I give the floor to Cuba.
Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. We support the proposal made by Cameroon for 4.5, and we have been looking at the documents submitted, including that of the tripartite, and we see that there's not much emphasis on communication here. We think that after advice, we should include communication awareness initiatives. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Cuba. I wonder about the placement of that. Awareness of the...
Delante de la...
Before awareness, we should have implement communication initiative. So before awareness. And this would be in line with the document, the tripartite document. Thank you.
So communication initiatives and awareness?
Perfecto.
Okay, so it's...
Yes.
communication initiatives in the plural, and awareness of the initiatives of the action plan. It's a lot of initiatives. I wonder if, just to tidy it up, whether we do say awareness of the action plan, but let's leave it as is. I give the floor to Australia.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Australia is comfortable with the proposals that have been made. We would just like to propose the inclusion of a couple more words just to make it clear as to where the focus is. So after the word focus, if we can say by the FAO. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. So let's go ahead and in that sentence, let's take off the square bracket before took note of. Let's delete welcomed managements. So we now have the committee took note of the advice that communication initiatives and awareness of the initiatives of the action plan. I guess now it has to be an ongoing area of focus, since we now have two subjects in that verb, by the FAO. I will give the floor to Argentina.
Madam Chair, on paragraph 4, the last sentence, we would prefer there to refer to alternative ingredients. Therefore, without the reference of whether they are local or natural, but we could refer to alternative ingredients that are safe, and that this safety, the safety of these ingredients needs to be proved through scientific methods. But whether they are local or natural or not should not be a condition for the substitution of antimicrobials. Thank you.
Perdón, mi propuesta es...
So, my proposal
es
explore alternative ingredients, and in brackets, put in brackets, science-based, natural, and local. And if we do wish to refer to science, then what science must do is provide assurance on the safety of these alternative ingredients.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. And certainly alternative ingredients does seem like that is the broadest possible term we could use that would encompass both natural and local ingredients. So perhaps just to move it forward, I'll suggest that we could go with that last suggestion. So delete science-based, natural, and local, and leave alternative. Speaking slowly so people can get their finger on the raise hand button. But I see no request for the floor, so let's consider that that is acceptable. Okay, in the interest of time, I am going to suggest we suspend our discussion on well, I'll be honest, as chair, I have not only sat through many discussions on this issue of antimicrobials as growth promoters, and I've certainly am very sympathetic to the tales of others who have sat through, as recently as last week, long discussions on this. And so, frankly, as chair, I find it hard to imagine our being able to arrive at a consensus on this. I've quickly scanned through the 2019 and the 2015 resolutions and don't see anything there that might help us. If I've missed it and members are aware of it, please bring it to my attention. But I'm not finding any clever and useful wording suggestions that might help us thread the needle on this point. So recognizing the importance of the issue to members, I still feel that it is not the best use of the committee's time. I think we could discuss this for a long time and still find ourselves at the same point. So what I am going to suggest for this chair's summary is that as a draft, I'm going to suggest, with some reluctance, of course, that we, where are we, chapter 3, that we do remove that reference here on the advice of some members, recognizing that some members do not do that, do not have that. I am very open to suggestions for wording that might work, and I'd be happy to come back to it with if there are sort of new suggestions that members have. So please feel free to get in touch with me, whether informally through the Secretariat, if you have suggestions you want to discuss. But for the time being, the only way forward I can see, unless we want to spend the rest of COAG on this topic, is going ahead and deleting what's in square brackets now in the draft. Of course, it's a draft, and we'll come back to this committee for endorsement. But that's my suggestion at this point. But as I say, I'm very open to any sort of drafting suggestions we can have to move this forward. And in fact, yes. So let's leave it at that for now, and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to go over the report of our discussion from yesterday on item 3.2, Global Program on Sustainable Dryland Agriculture. So if I can ask the Secretariat to get that up on the screen. All right, this is new. We haven't looked at this yet. It's Thursday. We're all looking forward to Saturday. Okay, so let me read it out. Paragraph 1. Let me just minimize this. There we go. The committee recognized the critical importance of achieving food and nutritional security and improved livelihoods. The committee supported the evidence-based country-led and country-owned systems approach encompassing international technical cooperation in order to accelerate agricultural transformation and sustainable rural development of drylands and adaptation to climate change, and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The committee acknowledged that the global program will support the members' initiatives in supporting an enabling environment through the development of appropriate technologies, policies, and regional strategies to ensure adoption and promotion of sustainable crop, livestock, soil, forest, and water management in drylands under a changing climate, and suggested FAO consider the prioritization of the countries to be included in the global program. The committee endorsed the global program on sustainable dryland agriculture and FAO's contribution to advance the 2030 agenda in partnership with developed countries with technical experience of sustainable management of dryland agricultural systems and South-South and triangular cooperation. The committee recommended the FAO monitor the implementation of the global program and adopt digitalization platforms and participatory approaches to support regular reporting. The committee recommended members to strengthen their cooperation for the implementation of the global program and urged them to support it through targeted policies, technologies, innovations, and investments. So we'll now can return to the top. See how many paragraphs we can look on the screen at once. It's 3. I will open the floor. It's 4. I will open the floor for comments on paragraphs 1 through 4. I give the floor to Argentina.
Muchas gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the first sentence, I think that it should be food security and nutrition. achieving food security and nutrition. Thank you. Second paragraph. After technical cooperation, in order to ensure sustainable agriculture and then continue with sustainable rural development as drafted already. To continue with drylands and adaptations as is already on the screen. I think this would be consistent with the Agenda 2030 language. Paragraph 3. The last sentence. I understood that this is a reflection of the statement made, our statement made in plenary. Now, we did not call for considering the prioritization of the countries to be included. Ours was a concrete suggestion that FAO include the countries, middle-income countries, in the global program. And the rationale for this is that the global program is in principle targeted to low-income countries for the first 5 years. This inclusion is in line with the requests that were made in the Program Committee and Council to include also the necessities and priorities of middle-income countries in FAO's programmatic activities, without any distinction, such as we had yesterday in a discussion on middle-income countries or developing countries and the use of that terminology. Here we insist that there be a specific reference to the income level, because the program presented by FAO identifies the beneficiary countries on the basis of their income category. We do not share a unidimensional approach in an area that, in an organization that is not a financial organization such as FAO. So we're using this language to reflect that which is being done in the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I give the floor to Cuba.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support the statement made by our colleague from Argentina, and in paragraph 2, we would like to include mitigation and adaptation to climate change, or climate change mitigation and adaptation, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you, Cuba. Give the floor to Sudan.
السلام عليكم.
Good morning. And I would like to thank FAO for this opportunity and make a proposal concerning paragraph 3. Ensure adaptation and promotion thereafter. We should have sustainable soil management, or after soil, sustainable soil management. So to repeat, paragraph 3. Fourth sentence, after soil, introduce sustainable soil management. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Capo Verde.
Good morning, all. Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Cabo Verde would like to include a paragraph. We're not sure if it's after the second or the third, but it would read like that. The committee took note of the important work developed by COAG towards awareness raising on the issues of water scarcity in agriculture and its importance in leveraging, together with hand-in-hand initiative, the work of the sustainable dryland agriculture program. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you, to all colleagues. Firstly, I'd like to support what has been said by the delegate of Argentina on what's now paragraph 4, the reference of including middle-income countries that would be in line with our discussions. Also on paragraph 5, thank you. I believe we could be more inclusive since it already refers to South-South and triangular cooperation, maybe on the second line we could delete developed and leave in partnership with countries with technical experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. Always better to be more expansive. I give the floor to Egypt.
Well, please, I'd like to add in the fourth paragraph, breeding also, in fostering and enable environment through the development of appropriate technologies and breeding policies.
No, that's in paragraph 4. Paragraph 4, so it would be through the development of appropriate technologies and breeding, I think is what I heard.
And breeding policies.
And breeding policies. So I think there would be no comma then after technologies. Is that? If you could just clarify, is it appropriate breeding?
Say breeding policies, yeah. Appropriate technologies, comma, breeding policies, and regional strategies.
Breeding, okay. So a comma after the policies following breeding and regional strategies. Appropriate technologies, breeding policies, and regional strategies. All right, I give the floor to Germany.
Thank you, Ms. Chairperson. I would like to suggest to insert, could you please scroll down a bit in what is now paragraph 5, in line 2 after 2030 agenda, the following, and to integrate into its global program and be subject to monitoring and evaluation, comma, including under the SDG monitoring framework, comma. Thank you.
Thank you, Germany. I see no further requests for the floor, so let's continue down to the new paragraphs 6 and 7. So I open the floor for any comments on these paragraphs. All right, and now we'll do our traditional go up to the top and run through this again to see, make sure there's no outstanding. So paragraph 1 is fine. Ensure it appears there's no controversy on the changes in paragraph 2. Paragraph 3, there were no comments. Paragraph 4, new paragraph 4. I see there's soil. I had understood the colleague had proposed sustainable soil management as an addition, so perhaps take off the square brackets around soil and remove the, so soil, delete the comma after soil and just put soil and sustainable soil management. And then I think I didn't hear any reactions to the proposal on deleting consider the prioritization, so please go ahead and delete that. As well as the square brackets. Paragraph 5, there was no further discussion. 6, 7. Okay, I give the floor to Capo Verde.
Yes, Chair, is just to ask to include integrated soil management.
Thank you. In paragraph 4 then, soil.
Yes,
soil.
Integrated. And sustainable soil management.
Thank you for that. I see no further requests for the floor, so I am going to say this is good to go to the drafting committee. Thank you very much for your work on that. I will now move to the next point, which is to look at the report of item 2.11, enabling smallholders and family farmers to access appropriate innovation, etc., etc. So I would ask the Secretariat to bring it up on the screen. Okay, so I will read through this so that we can benefit from interpretation. The committee acknowledged the importance of enabling access to appropriate innovation, information, and advisory services for smallholders and family farmers in order to unleash the full potential of innovation in transforming agriculture and food systems and lift millions of people out of poverty and food insecurity, thereby achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The committee recognized key challenges related to availability, accessibility, affordability of relevant innovation, information, and advisory services, the gap between the service providers and users, the fragmented and broken linkages between agricultural research, extension, and farmers, and the absence of institutional mechanisms to bring them all together. It also highlighted the critical role played by the extension and advisory services in providing support to smallholder family farmers, especially women, youth, and other vulnerable groups. The committee requested FAO to strengthen its technical support for members in promoting institutional reforms, the reorientation of services, and development of the technical and functional capacities of organizations within EAS. The committee requested FAO to strengthen its technical support to generate evidence for informed policy and investment decisions in order to increase investment in advisory services and strengthen engagement with its producer organizations, cooperatives, and other public and private sector actors. The committee also requested FAO to strengthen its capacity at headquarters and decentralized offices and develop tools, guidelines, and policy recommendations for institutional reforms. The committee requested FAO to develop programs to support members in improving demand-driven innovation, information, and advisory services by encouraging multiple actors and farmer participation in the co-creation of knowledge and sharing of good practices through multi-stakeholder innovation platforms. It also requested the organization to work towards bridging the gap between information generation and use by smallholder family farmers, as well as other vulnerable groups, by strengthening linkages between research, extension, and farmers. I will go back to the top and take comments. I guess we can't see all of 4, so I will take comments on paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. I give the floor to Argentina.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 1. In the third line, after potential of innovation, we would include 4, achieving or in achieving sustainable agriculture and food systems. Now down to paragraph 3. No, sorry, it's not paragraph 3, it's further down, and I'll take the floor later on when we move down, further down in the text. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I give the floor to Burkina Faso.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the statement we made yesterday on behalf of the Africa Regional Group and the change we requested for the text, we suggested that smallholders and family farmers not be relegated to the status of beneficiaries, that they be regarded as stakeholders. So we made a proposal to say facilitate the access and participation. So it's actually in the title that we wanted to make the change. That was the proposal of the Africa Regional Group. It wasn't just our proposal. It was to not just access, it's participation as well. Enabling smallholders and family farmers to access and participate in, the interpreter suggests.
Oui, exactement. Merci, Madame.
Yes, that's exactly how we'd like to see it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. I think it's an excellent point. And I'm just wondering whether it's better to highlight it as a point made by the committee rather than changing the title. And so if we, in fact, started off with a new, no, I think that's fine. We can, I think, let's just go ahead and change the title. That's probably the simplest thing. I give the floor to Germany.
Thank you, Ms. Chairperson. On paragraph 1, maybe it would be more appropriate, instead of just acknowledging, to say the committee underlined the importance. And then in the second line, after family farmers, we would like to insert the following: especially in remote areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Germany. I give the floor to the Philippines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On paragraph 1, we would request the addition of a reference to the UN Decade of Family Farming. Therefore, at the end of it, and implementing the UN Decade of Family Farming. Yeah, this could be improved by the drafting committee, but we would like a reference to that. with regard to what Burkina Faso has mentioned, indeed, it would be, I would support the concept that family farmers are not just on the receiving end, they are contributors, in fact, into achieving the SDGs, food security and nutrition, and sustainable livelihoods. That's why they need to be acknowledged as participants. The only technical thing, as you pointed out, is that item 2.11 is just, I think, re-indicating what the title of the document is, or the agenda item that was discussed. And I think it would be better to also it would be more operative if it goes, if the word "and participate" or the participation goes inside the committee recommendations and discussions. So probably, yeah, and of enabling access and enhancing participation, or something like that. Enhance participation. Yeah. Inappropriate in yeah, something like that. So the drafting committee could also improve on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those constructive suggestions. I give the floor to Sudan.
شكرا سيد الرئيس، صباح الخير على الجميع. في الفقرة الأولى السطر الرابع Achieving Sustainable Agriculture and Food System، التعديل Achieving Sustainable Agriculture, Food and Nutrition System. تمام ده كلام تمام.
I beg your pardon. I give the floor. Did we get the suggestion from Sudan? Yes. I give the floor to Switzerland.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would have a proposal in paragraph 3, so if you could scroll down a little bit. Thank you. We had a discussion about the role of FAO, particularly regarding its mandate. So we would propose changing para 3 after strengthen. So the committee requested FAO to strengthen its strategic guidance and knowledge support for members in order to underline that the role of FAO is rather on the strategic level. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Kenya.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. On paragraph 1, actually, I had raised my hand to add participation of smallholders, which Philippines has added. So I support Philippines. The other one, Chair, where we will put as relevant is the issue of sharing of information among farmers, farmer to farmer, sharing of information. And I'm trying to see where it will be, but I just wanted to raise these 2 points: farmer to farmer, sharing of information, and the importance of indigenous knowledge and local innovations. But the first point is already taken up, which was added by Philippines. Thank you, Chair.
I think farmer to farmer might be actually addressed in, I think it might go best in paragraph 5, which of course you can't see because it's at the very bottom, but that's where they talk about advisory services, etc. So yeah, farmer participation, co-creation of knowledge, sharing of good practices. And how about by encouraging multi and farmer participation, I would put comma after participation. Farmer participation, comma, including farmer to farmer knowledge sharing. And another comma. Okay, and then we have the indigenous, the importance of indigenous. Maybe it's actually in that paragraph as well. And I would just put it as a separate sentence, maybe after the right there, the committee noted the importance of indigenous, and Kenya, you had specific language. Could you repeat it? On indigenous knowledge or?
Yes, Chair. Noted the importance of indigenous knowledge and local innovations.
And local innovations.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so a preview of paragraph 5, but I think that's where those comments would be best placed. So let's go back up to paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 that we were looking at. And I give the floor to Burundi. Who was not able to raise their hand, but indicated in the chat that they wanted to speak. So the floor is given to Burundi, who may be muted somewhere.
Allô, vous m'entendez?
I'm sorry. Actually, I wasn't trying to ask for the floor. I apologize.
Allô?
I beg your pardon. Then I give the floor to Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. I would have a comment on paragraph 3. Actually, we would like to express a preference for the text that was before, that is to the committee requested FAO to strengthen its technical support. I believe we heard a lot of countries expressing their wish for technical assistance in this regard, and we believe that FAO has does a lot of important work on the ground regarding this subject. And maybe what was meant by the delegate of Switzerland on strategic guidance is already contemplated on paragraph 4, and maybe some changes could be done there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a specific proposal for paragraph 4 or?
Thank you, Chair. On my part, just the deletion on paragraph 3, and what I mean that for the text in paragraph 4, I believe it already conveys the idea of this strategic guidance and knowledge support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I give the floor to Nigeria.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Happy new month. I want to speak to para 5. Thank you. Starting with the committee noted the importance of indigenous knowledge, cultivar, and local innovations. Cultivars. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I will now accept comments on any paragraph whatsoever. So don't hold back. I give the floor to Germany.
Thank you, Ms. Chairperson. Could you please scroll up to paragraph 1? It was already raised in the chat by Argentina. In line 4, we should, for the sake of consistency, put it right. So we should, after agriculture, have food systems and nutrition, and delete systems and after nutrition. So this is the terminology we usually apply when we talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Germany. I give the floor to Sudan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In para number 2, line 1, key challenges related to availability, accessibility, and affordability. Instead of this,
dimension, food security and nutrition. For dimensions. Nutrition.
So is it related to the 4 dimensions?
And yes.
4 dimensions of food security and nutrition? Okay, thank you for that suggestion. I give the floor to Argentina.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Germany for making that change to our proposal in paragraph 1. In paragraph 3, we'd like to support what Brazil said, in that we'd like to maintain the original wording of that text. We understand that this strategic guidance should be upon request from members. So either we delete what's been added to paragraph 3, or we add to what is mentioned there, saying support to members at their request. So that would actually be within the text that's in red there. So the current text in red, before the square bracket ends, at the request of members, or at their request, yes. Thank you. That's perfect, thank you. But our preference would be to keep the original wording though, as Brazil suggested. Paragraph 4, at the end, after institutional reforms, comma, as appropriate. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I give the floor to Switzerland.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to both Brazil and Argentina for these comments. The motivation why we proposed this is our discussion we had particularly regarding section 5 of the reference document COAG 2020-15, which describes a set of tasks which are not or should not be in the responsibility of FAO. So in our view, we have to make it clear that we work within the mandate of FAO. And the mandate is primarily strategic guidance and knowledge support. So how to formulate this concretely, we are, of course, open. We could work for a solution which could have the wording, the committee requested FAO to strengthen its strategic guidance and knowledge competencies, as well as technical support for members in paragraph 3. So replacing the text in the square brackets by the committee requested FAO to strengthen its strategic guidance and knowledge competencies, delete support for members at their request, and then continue by as well as its technical support for members and so on. Thank you.
Thank you for that suggestion. I have no further requests for the floor, so let's go up to paragraph 1. On the title, okay, we've changed the title. I will leave that to the drafting committee. It's a very important point, just whether to change the title or have the comment only in paragraph 1. I think that's just a question of usage, whether the title needs to reflect what the title was in the agenda. But the point itself, I think, is extremely important and needs to be reflected. Paragraph 1 looks like there was no, so I think we can go ahead and delete that in square brackets, in transforming agriculture and food systems. I didn't hear any objections to that. Paragraph 2 looks good. Paragraph 3, this has just been changed as per Switzerland's reaction to comments earlier, so let's take the square brackets off, and hopefully those changes have addressed the concerns, but if not, I'm sure we'll hear from members. Paragraph 4, there were no issues there and no issues here. So I'm looking, I see no requests for the floor, so I think we will consider this ready to go to drafting committee. Thank you very much for your constructive engagement there. Let's move on to a new item. So we will now continue with the timetable, somewhat late, and move on to item 3.1. Implementation of the FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors. The relevant document is COAG 2020-16. The introductory note by the Secretariat was already made available on the COAG webpage, and I will therefore open the floor directly for discussion. This is, of course, a very important topic, and the importance has been reflected by the many times it has been on the agendas of Council and Program Committee and various other bodies. So I would encourage members to try to keep their interventions here as brief as possible and focusing on some of the new items in this document, as it is one that is building on previous discussions on biodiversity. So I'll now open the floor, and I give the floor to kick us off with to Chile.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Antes de
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before starting with this item, we would like to ask for a clarification. When will we be looking at the conclusions on AMR?
From my perspective on AMR, I would say that we've taken the discussion as far as we can with the current draft, and my recommendation as chair is I don't see room for consensus, so my recommendation is we proceed with the item with the reference to elimination phasing out, etc., out, and that is what we should go to the committee with. But I have expressed an openness to receiving additional proposals that might be useful, in which case I will bring it back to this committee. So I can't give a time. I haven't received anything at this point. If I do receive something, I will, though, give lots of notice. I will give at least an hour's advance notice that it's coming up. I won't spring it if I do get any additional text proposals. And otherwise, we'll see what the discussion is like at the adoption of the report.
Gracias. Gracias.
Okay, so on item 3.1, I will give the floor to China, followed by Brazil. China, you have the floor.
I think Indonesia should talk before us, correct? Madam Chair, maybe you have to give first the floor to Indonesia. Oh.
I have Indonesian on the speakers list, but lower down. But if China would like to pass the floor, I wish I had rules of procedure. I will pass the floor to Indonesia then. Who I assume may have a regional statement. So Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Indonesia delegation comment to the work of FAO on the biodiversity mainstreaming and appreciates the process of implementation of the FAO's strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agriculture sector, particularly on the draft of action plan for 2021 to 2023, which we view very comprehensive and holistic. We support the 4 FAO outcomes and key actions under 7 core action areas, which provide member countries to enhance their capacity to mainstream biodiversity in the agriculture sector. In this opportunity, allow me to share briefly our national strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sector in Indonesia, particularly with regard to increasing people's awareness on in situ conservation for agriculture, which consists of conserving crop-wide relative, wide food plan, and land races for serving gene pool and sustainable use of plant genetic resources for food and agriculture, conserving threatened species, increasing participatory breeding on the farmer community using locally available land races, increasing farmer participation in the local gene bank for emergency condition and recovery of agriculture system in post-disaster condition, supporting the national and local government to develop coherent policy and legal framework that integrate biodiversity across the agriculture sector, supporting mobilizing resources for biodiversity mainstreaming and investment in situ agriculture in sustainable agriculture approaches that better contribute to biodiversity, including funding from the Global Environment Facility or GEF on in situ conservation by involving multi-stakeholders, including local farmer and local government, supporting country in building capacity for monitoring of sustainable biodiversity management using ecosystem approaches, strengthening collaboration between international, national, and local commission on genetic resources on the awareness of the importance of genetic resources biodiversity. Indonesia would also propose to take consideration on maintaining microbiodiversity to support sustainable use of genetic resources for food and agriculture. We are pleased to collaborate with FAO, supported by the Global Environment Facility under ongoing project, the Crop Diversity Conservation for Sustainable Use in Indonesia, and the Food Systems, Land Use and Restoration of Follower Impact Program. These programs aim to address biodiversity conservation challenges through integrated system-based approaches. Lastly, we encourage FAO to continue its engagement with all relevant stakeholders to further develop, finalize, and implement the action plan by taking into account increasing synergy and avoiding duplication of work. With this comment, Indonesia support document COAG 2020-16. I thank you, Madam Chairperson. And over.
Okay, thank you, Indonesia. I will turn. I apologize. I'm a little confused with what happened there with China. China's no longer on my list. I'll give the floor to Brazil. Okay. I will give the floor back to China and we will resume with the speakers list. And I apologize for the jumping around to members. China, you have.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No problem. I'd like to clarify before raising the hand. I saw our colleague from Indonesia raise the hand. That's why I asked you to do the opposite. Okay, thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I'd like to thank the Secretariat for this document. China welcomes the implementation of and the progress achieved by the strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agriculture sectors. We've noted that the draft action plan 2021-2023 has made clear plans for key actions, deliverables, and delivery dates. We really appreciate these. We encourage FAO to notify member states timely of the progress of the action plan. We have here a suggestion. It's on page 22 of the document, Chinese version, page 22, English version, page 22 as well. Among the annual activities under raise awareness of the role of biodiversity and its ecosystem services for food security and nutrition at relevant fora, it's at the bottom in the left column on page 22. We recommend to include the international days newly established by the General Assembly, such as the International Tea Day on the 21st of May, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, China, and thank you for looking out for Indonesia. And I will now pass the floor to Brazil, followed by Germany. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Brazil thanks the Secretariat for this draft plan of action for the implementation of FAO strategy on biodiversity mainstreaming across agricultural sectors. FAO already does a lot of work related to biodiversity, as reflected in the plan of action, which can serve us as a good tool for further organizing such work and promoting synergies. At the same time, the action plan seems to be limited in its majority to activities that FAO and its partners already developed or plan to develop, lacking a strategic focus on what remains to be done. Although we are aware of the restricted financial resources and the zero growth of FAO budget, we believe a careful review of the action plan will be due after the approval of the post-2020 global framework by the CBD, so that FAO can really harness its potential of contributing to the implementation of this framework. Furthermore, Brazil would like to thank the Secretariat for having included in the plan of action activities related to the access and benefit sharing and to the resource mobilization as previously suggested by us. Likewise, we welcome the inclusion of support to development of livestock master plans upon country requests. We would like to ask for clarification on the global action plan on eliminating risks of highly hazardous pesticides, since we are not aware of the development of such document. Finally, Brazil would like to highlight that the approval of this plan of action does not imply our endorsement of the activities and products of initiatives in which Brazil does not participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. Germany, followed by Mexico. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Chairperson. I am honored to speak on behalf of the EU and its 27 member states. We would like to stress that biodiversity as the basis for food security and nutrition. The FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity and the action plan for its implementation provide a sound basis for the important work in the FAO. The FAO has to strengthen collaboration between existing bodies and initiatives, including the Committee on World Food Security and the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, as well as the partnerships with all relevant international organizations and instruments. Strong links should be built between matters related to climate change and nature-based solutions, including agroecology and other innovative approaches. Agricultural practices that have an effective and proven positive impact on biodiversity, such as the conservation and sustainable use of pollinators, agroforestry, integrated soil fertility management, integrated pest management, increased diversity of cultivated plants, and increased diversity of domesticated animals should be promoted. The FAO's normative and standard-setting instruments are essential also in biodiversity work. The current pandemic and potential future pandemics require special attention also in the biodiversity context, including tackling the root causes in line with the One Health approach. We appreciate the place given to agroecology, though the suggested actions should be further operationalized in targeted regions, and the reference to the One Health approach that FAO pursues along with WHO and OIE. We also appreciate the place given to geographical indications. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Thank you, Germany, Mexico, then Dominican Republic. Mexico, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mexico welcomes this presentation on the progress made in implementation of the FAO strategy to mainstream biodiversity across agricultural sectors and the plan of action spanning the period 2021-2023. It's necessary to continue to strengthen FAO's work in the area of biodiversity so that FAO in turn can continue to support governments in improving their capacity in addressing the issues relating to the conservation of biodiversity in agricultural sectors. Mexico is firmly convinced of the importance of biodiversity for food and agriculture, and that is why it is important to continue to move forward through mainstreaming biodiversity across agriculture sectors through measures and policies that are in alignment with the ambitions of FAO's plan of action. In particular, in the framework of cooperation with different international funds, Mexico supports mainstreaming with actions such as the following: the design of state-level strategies for mainstreaming biodiversity in agriculture, designing and implementing a platform that will make it possible to monitor and avoid the extension of the cropland border. Again, sustainable management of grasslands to promote the increase of biodiversity of forage in livestock landscapes. Again, supporting native varieties for the diversification of cultivations in agricultural production systems, restoration of marine and coastline ecosystems, implementation of a campaign called My Lot Will Not Burn to reduce burning in agricultural settings and increase alternatives for sustainable soil management and agricultural conservation, and also design of a program for the conservation and use of pollinators. This is why Mexico is making progress in this area in alignment with the 2021-2023 Plan of Action proposed by FAO. We encourage FAO to continue to work intensely in the operationalization of this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico, Dominican Republic, then Korea. Dominican Republic, you have the floor.
Thank you. We welcome the plan of action for the implementation of the FAO strategy on biodiversity mainstreaming across agricultural sectors. We think it's important that FAO continue its close cooperation with WHO and OIE in the One Health focus, especially the framework of the current pandemic. Members, especially developing countries, require in this area, as in others, to continue to receive normative support through the Technical Cooperation Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominican Republic, for your to-the-point intervention. Republic of Korea, followed by Switzerland. Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Republic of Korea appreciates FAO for providing this valuable document. This document, an action plan for FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity, is crucial because biodiversity is an essential element for sustainable agriculture and food systems. Korea sincerely looks forward to hearing meaningful results from various countries and fields through the well-established action plan and its implementation. My delegation particularly values FAO's convening of regional dialogues on biodiversity, because biodiversity is an issue not confined to one country, but an issue which requires an active cooperation among adjacent countries. Korea also highly welcomes the first global assessment report of biodiversity. We recommend FAO to release the subsequent report periodically by assessing the improved and current status based on continuous cooperation with other agencies, including CGRFA. Speaking of partnership in detail, we cannot overemphasize the importance of cooperation with WHO and OIE. The One Health approach is fundamental for a comprehensive approach in terms of animal-human environment interface. In this context, we would like to make one suggestion with regard to the FAO's plan of nominating focal points in technical divisions. We expect some focal points may have insufficient knowledge regarding biodiversity. Thus, we recommend FAO to work with OIE and WHO in terms of training staffs who is in charge of biodiversity as well. Lastly, with regard to monitoring, we are supportive to FAO's plan of two different but complementary types of indicators. In this regard, we recommend FAO to set indicators which can measure and capture detailed and real changes from the field in order to keenly review results in relation to FAO's roles and programs of work indicated in this document. With these comments, Korea supports this document. Thank you, Madam Chair. Over to you.
Thank you. Switzerland, then Canada. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Switzerland thanks the Secretariat for document 2020/16 and welcomes FAO's progress made in the implementation of FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity. Switzerland calls for an integrative approach in order to successfully conserve and use biodiversity in a sustainable manner and in order to achieve food security and nutrition and promote sustainable food systems. Concerning the action plan, we noticed that the many actions listed lack a clear prioritization. As an example, in the second key action listed under outcome 1, the Global Plan of Action on Aquatic Genetic Resources, which is sectorial, becomes before the policy response to the state of the world's biodiversity for food and agriculture, which addresses cross-cutting and global issues. In addition, the action plan lacks a clear separation between the normative activities, which are the responsibility of the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, and the activities linked to capacity building, which are the responsibility of FAO. We believe that the policy response to be developed based on the state of the world's biodiversity for food and agriculture will be a crucial normative tool to support the implementation of the CBD post-2020 biodiversity framework in the agriculture and food sectors. Based on these remarks, we suggest to add a specific reference to the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture in the key actions as follows. First, support the CGRFA in developing the policy response to the report on the state of the world's biodiversity for food and agriculture as a tool to support implementation of the global biodiversity framework post-2020 in the food and agriculture sector. Second, support the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture in developing the Global Plan of Action for Aquatic Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. And third, support countries in the implementation of the agreed global plans of action of the CGRFA on animal, plant, and forest genetic resources. Finally, we would like to share a more detailed comment concerning outcome 4 on page 24 of the English document. We believe that the third core action should not only focus on strengthening the collaboration with international organizations, but it should go beyond this. Therefore, we suggest the following addition. In the first column, add "and other actors," and in the third column, add civil society and private sector actors. We can, of course, provide those detailed comments in writing. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Canada, followed by Russia. Canada, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Canada welcomes the FAO's efforts towards biodiversity, mainstreaming in the fisheries and aquaculture sector, and works directly to support this process through its participation at the FAO Committee on Fisheries. Canada recognizes the need for the FAO to continue working with the Convention on Biological Diversity and other international partners to ensure a consistent approach to biodiversity mainstreaming. While Canada generally supports the FAO's efforts to mainstream biodiversity across its policies and programs, this process should clarify that this will not result in the duplication of efforts and reporting burden with existing bodies and commitments, such as the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. Furthermore, Canada believes that the timelines in the action plan are right to be ambitious, but we are concerned that they may not be achievable. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Russia, followed by France. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Madam Chairperson, we would like to underscore the vital role of biodiversity in improving agriculture and food production and ensuring the conservation of resources and ecosystems. We note FAO's focus on mainstreaming biodiversity in agricultural policies. And in this connection, we welcome the FAO report on the state of the world's biodiversity for food and agriculture, which sets out significant recommendations for the conservation and use of genetic resources to enhance productivity. We support the operationalization of FAO's strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors and the aiming at reducing the negative impact of agriculture on biodiversity and supporting sustainable agricultural practices and the conservation, improvement, protection, and restoration of biodiversity. We call for the prompt development of the plan and timetable spanning the period 2021-2023 to be submitted to the technical committees for consideration and to Council for approval. We support the inclusion of the draft action plan, in the draft action plan, of targets and indicators to monitor the implementation of the strategy's outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. France, then Argentina. France, you have the floor.
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning. France aligns itself with the statement of the European Union and its members. FAO, owing to its mandate and strategy, is a major player in the area of conservation, sustainable management, and restoration of biodiversity. Its essential role is in developing knowledge, but also in guiding the policies and practices of members. And for this, we thank FAO for its proposed plan of action to implement its strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors. This is a major challenge in the face of the massive erosion of biodiversity which we're witnessing today. Biodiversity provides essential ecosystem services for food and agriculture, and therefore the conservation, sustainable management, and restoration of biodiversity are key issues for maintaining food security and nutrition throughout the world. It is also essential that agricultural practices do not degrade the ecosystem or biodiversity. France has high ambitions in this area, and we call for a comprehensive approach to management, sustainable management of biodiversity and conservation. Nature-based solutions such as agroecology, biological, organic agriculture are extremely important for us, and we support them. France, in the next few months, will be organizing a summit on biodiversity chaired by the President of the French Republic. France will also welcome and host in 2021 the upcoming Congress of the National Union for Conservation of Nature. France looks forward to the adoption of an ambitious global framework for the post-2020 period in the Convention on Biological Diversity, where mainstreaming biodiversity, in particular in agriculture, will be a major issue. And we thank FAO for its active participation in the work for the Convention on Biological Diversity, and in particular when it hosted last February the second meeting of the working group, and in the process also a number of regional and local consultations that were organized with member states throughout the world. Finally, as also pointed out by the European Union, the emergence of new diseases of animal origin in recent years and the current pandemic context lead us to have full awareness at a political level of the strong linkages between human, environmental, and plant life, and therefore we call on FAO, WHO, and OIE in the One Health approach to continue and step up their joint work, in particular relating to zoonosis, to prevent the occurrence of future pandemics using multilateral institutions for the environment. Thank you very much, including UNEP, of course.
Thank you. Argentina, then Peru. Argentina, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Argentina appreciates the document on implementation of the FAO strategy on biodiversity, mainstreaming across agricultural sectors, prepared by the Secretariat, and also salute the progress made so far. The plan of action for 2021-2023 is ambitious. It contains measures of very broad reach, and therefore we think that it's important that this action plan be submitted for the consideration of all of the technical committees of FAO. We have comments on the contents of the plan of action and a question on the procedure for the finalization of this action plan. And I will try to be as concise as possible, although I do apologize because I will not be able to keep to 3 minutes. I'll do my best. First of all, it's important to identify clearly all of the key measures and all of the outcomes proposed, the linkage with food and agriculture. There are times in which this information is not clear enough, and there are more generic references to biodiversity. Second, the document seems to conceive the mainstreaming of biodiversity in agriculture as a strategy that is aiming more at avoiding environmental degradation than contributing to food security, whereas the central mandate of FAO is food security. And therefore we highlight the role that the organization must have in promoting sustainable practices using technology, biotechnologies that make it possible to step up production without increasing the pressure of agriculture on ecosystems. Third, we point out the importance of the plan of action working together with other international processes. It's important to respect the different scopes and remits of the different international organizations and not move forward in processes that are still under negotiation in other fora, and to avoid duplication of efforts. For instance, the references to the Global Biodiversity Framework should be included when such a framework is adopted. Fourth, all reports on the state of biodiversity within the jurisdiction of one country must be carried out, must be prepared based mainly on information provided by the national authorities of this country, and then be submitted to the consideration of that country in the case in which there's a need for any correction of information containing natural resources under that country's jurisdiction. We emphasize the fact that actions in countries must be carried out following request of that country and in alignment with the priorities identified by the country. We also support the comments made by Brazil relating in particular to the fact that the adoption of this plan of action should not mean that we are endorsing all of the activities and products contained in the action plan, which all countries do not participate in. These would be the general comments that we would like to make on the substance of the document. We have more specific comments on the measures under Outcome 3, in particular relating to the geographical indications and the focus of sustainable agriculture. But at this point, I would briefly move on to some procedural issues. And here I would like to draw attention to a similar process we believe should also take place within the Commission for Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. In the last session, after examining the state of biodiversity for food and agriculture in the world, it recommended the development of a global plan of action on biodiversity with a group of national biodiversity coordinators or focal points. This group has yet to meet, owing also to the difficulties, of course, raised by the current pandemic. But here we therefore have two processes and two different plans of action, but on the same subject. One being developed by the Commission on Genetic Resources based on the report on the state of biodiversity, and the other, the one that we are considering now, on the biodiversity mainstreaming strategy. Now, as there may be some cross-section, we have some proposals, concrete proposals for the Secretariat. First of all, we would like, unfortunately the sound has been lost.
Para la alimentación y la agricultura, relativa a la elaboración de este.
First is a comment on the development of this plan of action to avoid, the point is to avoid duplication, because both processes have the same subject matter and may raise similar issues. Many delegations have already pointed out the importance of coordination with the Commission and with its process. If this mechanism, if a mechanism for this sort were not to be created, then we think that in the conclusions of this, on this point, we should take on board the recommendation of COAG, referring to the group of national coordinators for biodiversity, that they consider this plan of action. Finally, we don't have time to make more specific proposals on the plan of action, although we have seen that many countries do have very specific concerns regarding given paragraphs or points and have submitted proposals. We would also have many very specific comments to make, and therefore we would like to submit them in writing so that they will maybe taken into consideration in the next round of consideration of this plan, first by the Program Committee and subsequently by the technical committees. And therefore, we would like the conclusions to reflect the fact that countries will be submitting comments in writing. Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for the time I've taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Peru, then USA. Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Peru thanks the Secretariat for the document, especially given the importance Peru attaches to this subject and given FAO's commitment in this area. Biodiversity includes the variability of living organisms at various levels, genetic, species, ecosystems, and it also includes cultural diversity. Peru is a megadiverse country. Our territory is even catalogued as a centre of origin and diversification of various crops. This privilege brings with it great responsibility for the conservation, promotion and sustainable use of this biodiversity, and this has always been a challenge for people in Peru since ancestral times. In Peru, we have been developing actions that promote the mainstreaming of biodiversity across agricultural sectors through the recognition and management of geographical areas designated as agrobiodiversity areas, through an in situ conservation strategy to harness the potential of the great diversity of native crops. This strategy complements the ex situ agrobiodiversity conservation actions in our national gene bank. In the framework of FAO's strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors, Peru has been implementing two projects funded by the Global Environment Facility, the GEF project on agrobiodiversity and the GEF project on the Nagoya Protocol. We have also submitted to FAO our report on the state of Peru's biodiversity for food and agriculture. We have also been participating in drafting the second report of the Global Action Plan on the state of plant genetic resources for food and agriculture and the first report on animal genetic resources. We are also drafting the third report on the state of the world's plant genetic resources for food and agriculture. The implementation of the FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors is in line with the SDGs, and its implementation is necessary in the context of climate change at the moment and in light of other threats which have an impact on biodiversity. However, we believe it would be important to reflect on the use of specific indicators at the national, local and community levels, given both agricultural practices and biodiversity itself in countries such as Peru are extremely variable and need to be assessed and monitored with as much precision as possible. Given more biodiversity requires more efforts for conservation and sustainable use, we call on FAO to continue supporting the efforts of developing countries like Peru, and especially given that these are countries which are significantly biodiverse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peru, and thank you for that. Just a reminder to colleagues, we are running a day late and we have one afternoon left. So to the extent we can keep our interventions brief and to the point, it would be appreciated. US followed by Australia. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States takes note of the progress made in implementing the FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors. We support efforts to integrate biodiversity considerations into agricultural activities and recognize the importance of conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity to preserve critical ecosystem services and improve food security. The draft 21-23 action plan presents an ambitious and comprehensive roadmap to work to advance the mainstreaming of biodiversity across agricultural sectors. However, our delegation has serious concerns about the action plan's reference to geographical indicators. A GI provides intellectual property protection but does not confer or imply by itself product grading, helpfulness, or sustainability, including biodiversity preservation, until there is a peer review evidence to support the linkage between GIs and improved biodiversity outcomes. We reject the key action to raise awareness on the potential of GIs to preserve biodiversity and contribute to nutrition and healthy diets. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, US, for your concise intervention. Australia, then Mali. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Australia supports the FAO's work on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural, fisheries and forestry sectors. We also support and promote other international mainstreaming biodiversity efforts, such as those being progressed through the Convention on Biological Diversity. We are also working on mainstreaming biodiversity in our own national biodiversity policies. As we have done in the past, Australia emphasises the importance of a cross-sectoral framework of policies that are market-oriented, based on scientific evidence, take into account differences in national circumstances, and are consistent with relevant international obligations. We also again highlight the importance of not using incentives to promote improved biodiversity as a veiled way of introducing trade or production distorting subsidies. On the Draft Action Plan 2021 to 2023, Australia offers the following comments, and given the wide range of comments already offered today, encourages further wide-ranging consultation opportunities ahead of finalising the document. Firstly, noting the number of international bodies working to improve biodiversity outcomes, we encourage the FAO to ensure that any work it conducts is complementary and non-duplicative. In this regard, we note that there are a number of biodiversity-related activities being progressed internationally, and we consider there would be benefit in leveraging these and promoting a cohesive approach. For example, we believe it will be important to link in with the CBD post-2020 work on invasive species, impact on diversity, and also the OIE and CITES work on wildlife wet markets and international and domestic trade in invasive species. Secondly, we consider that more actions should be introduced to build capacity in invasive species management, and also suggest incorporating additional actions of broadening the focus for the deliverable on a regional workshop on the development of contingency plans for invasive species outbreaks in forests in Europe and Central Asia. Thirdly, there are a number of areas where we consider incorporating actions relating to Indigenous peoples, local communities and traditional knowledge, such as, but not limited to, the core action area on page 22 of the English version of the document to facilitate partnerships that support biodiversity mainstreaming between government, development partners, civil society and the private sector. And finally, Australia would like to highlight that actions that do not meet the objectives of the strategy or that are unrelated to the outcome or key actions should be reassessed for inclusion. This is particularly important as we think it would be unfortunate if scarce FAO resources were directed towards actions with tenuous or unproven links to biodiversity outcomes, or which create post-justification of potential agricultural production or trade distorting measures. By way of example, and as just flagged by the US, on pages 21 and 22 of the English version of the document, we note the inclusion of references to geographical indications and recommend that such references be removed. In addition, Australia has more detailed comments that I will be happy to provide to the Secretariat in writing. And as a final note, we note that the mainstreaming biodiversity will also be discussed next week at the Committee on Forestry. Australia remains particularly supportive of this work in forest management, and we look forward to discussing this area of the plan in more detail next week. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Molly, followed by New Zealand. Molly, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair. A very good day to everyone. Mali supports FAO in this very ambitious work stream, in this very broad area covering the biodiversity of the world's environment. We welcome the fact that a lot of focus is placed on the animal aspect, given the threat of animal zoonoses, and we stress the importance of a One Health approach. The mainstreaming of biodiversity across all agricultural sectors is quite an ambitious goal in the current context. We look at the threats on biodiversity at the moment. They are many. They include invasive alien species, climate change, pollution, overexploitation. These are huge challenges. We also have invasive plants in many watercourses that affect many watercourses in countries like mine. These plants affect species and ecosystems, and we are quite concerned about the enormity of this challenge. Among the areas for action mentioned in the strategy, it talks about supporting countries in the implementation of normative tools and instruments when it comes to biodiversity. This is programmed for 2020-2023. We're wondering why 2023 is the date for this and not 2021. We encourage the facilitation of continued dialogue when it comes to including biodiversity in many discussions. We welcome all initiatives and partnerships foreseen in this strategy. We support the plan for the monitoring of the implementation of the strategy, and this is also in line with the cycle for the framework strategy monitoring, and it's also based on the cycle for the PWB framework monitoring. We, with these comments, support the FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. New Zealand, then Thailand. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand welcomed the FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors, and to that end welcomes the information on FAO's work to implement the strategy thus far and the forward draft 2021 to 23 action plan. Given the alignment of timing between this 2021 to 23 plan and the negotiation and initial implementation of the post-2020 UN draft global biodiversity framework, we would suggest that the major actions and outcomes for this strategy should be more strongly and directly tied to the successful integration of FAO's relevant areas of mandate and of this strategy into the formation and initial implementation of the framework. Outputs such as the state of the world's biodiversity for food and agriculture global assessment are important to inform the negotiations of the post-2020 framework and deserve a more prominent profile in wider UN reforms. We consider there have been many useful and valid points raised by others today and look forward to participating in further consultations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thailand, then Sudan. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and very good morning to all colleagues. Thailand appreciate the progress made in the implementation of the FAO strategies on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors. We would like to stress the urgent need to conserve and restore biodiversity across, between, and within agricultural sectors and other sectors. We certainly need to stop and reverse the current trends of biodiversity loss to achieve food, nutrition, and health securities. In Thailand, several initiatives and programs are underway to match and keep balance between biodiversity conservation and economic development needs. Thailand also supports FAO in strengthening the evidence base on interactions between biodiversities, the agricultural sectors, and food securities and nutrition, which should be built on the latest scientific findings and traditional knowledge. Thailand commends FAO for the technical work carried out so far on biodiversity mainstreaming and for the successful leveraging of considerable environmental financings to implement projects in various countries. Finally, Thailand recommends approval of FAO draft action plan for the implementation of the FAO strategies on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors 2021 to 2023. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Thailand. Sudan, then Chile. Sudan, you have the floor.
السلام عليكم صباح الخير.
Hello. The delegation of my country welcomes this document on the implementation of FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors. We stress the need to define the gaps and how they can be filled through the use of certain actions. In Sudan, we have many ecosystems which preserve biodiversity, taking into account the situation of climate change and the natural resources and threats that we have in our country. Many of the areas where our ecosystems are located are subjected to natural disasters and negative climate phenomena and weather phenomena. Sudan welcomes FAO's work. We welcome the support FAO provides to member nations for the implementation of this strategy. And we would like to stress the importance of technical assistance to strengthen biodiversity in our country so that we can achieve food security and preserve biodiversity. Many thanks.
Thank you, Sudan. I give the floor to Chile.
Sorry, Chair. Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are grateful for the presentation of this document, and we're happy to see that comments from member states have been taken into account. We'd like to make 3 general comments. The interpreter apologizes. We seem to have lost the audio connection.
¿Aló? ¿Me escucha?
Yes, Chile, we lost.
Yes.
After,
Now you can
I would
hear
like
me?
to make 3 general comments.
Okay. Primero.
So, firstly, in this plan, it's mostly a list of the actions that FAO has already committed to doing. All of them need to be approved by the governing bodies, and so we would like to say that we need to have a strategic analysis of the gaps that exist and the actions that need to be taken. Secondly, as Chile has said in other committees, we say that this work needs to support countries. It should not impose additional burden on member nations. When it comes to certain data requirements, for example, in Chile and other countries, the main instrument used to gather information on agriculture is a national census on agriculture, and this is done every 10 years, and this needs to be taken into account. in FAO's design of the systems that they are putting in place to support member nations. Thirdly, FAO's work needs to be complementary and in synergy with other multilateral agreements on the environment, and in the case of biodiversity, especially when it comes to the Convention on Biological Diversity. We also support what Brazil said and Argentina said in relation to the fact that the option of this plan of action does not necessarily mean that we support all of the actions mentioned in the document. In paragraph 6, referring to FAO's work on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors, strengthening coordination in relation to FAO's work on biodiversity, it says it asks for units to coordinate in relation to biodiversity. We'd like to know if this coordination, because it says that there are coordinators that have been put in place, we'd like to know if these coordinators have been put in place already. And we also have a question in relation to the funding for the action plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm at the end of my speakers list for members. I do have 2 requests for the floor from observers. As I mentioned at the beginning, the convention is that observers participate as time permits. We're running a day late, but I do think it's important for observers to be heard, so I will open the floor to our 2 observers, but I would again request that they try to be as concise as possible. So with that, I will pass the floor to IPC AFSA. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I will be brief. As has been said before, the industrial corporate-driven model of agriculture and food production is a main driver of biodiversity loss. As representatives of small-scale food producers, we emphasize once again the crucial contribution of our communities to the preservation, sustainable use, and further development of biodiversity through our production and management practices, and we have some specific recommendations. We welcome the reference made to the 10 elements of agroecology in the working document, and we urge FAO and members to include them under all outcomes in the action plan, not only under outcome 1, as in the current draft. We recommend not to limit the activities under outcome 1 to Africa only, but to cover all regions. We welcome the recommended mainstreaming of biodiversity as part of the UN Decade on Family Farming, outcome 3, but we recommend to also refer to the decade in the deliverables and not only under the key actions, in order to make the linkages concrete and ensure monitoring. The management of seeds and breeds by small-scale food producers are critical contributions to preservation, sustainable use, and constant development of biodiversity, and we welcome the references to the IT-PGRFA that are included in the draft action plan. But we also recommend to refer particularly to the implementation of its provisions under Articles 5, 6, and 9. We further recommend to make explicit reference to the ad hoc technical expert groups established by the governing body, namely on farmers' rights and on sustainable use of PGRFA. Finally, we consider it crucial that the biodiversity strategy and the action plan make reference to biodiversity-related key policy documents, such as the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forests, and the voluntary guidelines for securing small-scale fisheries. And the action plan should therefore contain specific activities to ensure mainstreaming biodiversity in FAO's activities in support of the implementation of these guidelines, which could be included under outcomes 2, 3, and/or 4. And of course, we remind FAO and members of the importance of ensuring the meaningful participation of small-scale food producers, organizations in all activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those practical and concise comments. I give the floor now to IFOAM Organics International.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Excellencies, my name is Gabor Figetsky, talking on behalf of IFOAM Organics International. We are the global umbrella for organic farming. During the last decades, worldwide biodiversity has been lost at an unprecedented rate in all the ecosystems, including agroecosystems. Homogenization of agricultural production systems, mainly due to intensification of agricultural systems, coupled with specialization by plant and animal breeders, and the harmonizing effects of globalization, is one of the greatest causes of agricultural biodiversity loss. Amidst these crises humanity is facing, the public is providing for more than $1 million per minute in farm subsidies globally, much of which is driving the climate crisis and destruction of wildlife, with only 1% of it used to benefit the environment. Together with the below-cost pricing for the use of natural resources under consumer subsidies, these subsidies effectively provide incentives to increase use of subsidized resources, production and consumption. This not only increases environmental damage, but can also restrict the development and use of more sustainable technologies and processes. At the same time, we can see solutions all over the world. Organic farming produces clear benefits for biodiversity in comparison to highly intensive industrial agricultural systems, while providing farm resilience in the long term. It is now scientifically proven that organic and agroecological systems are capable of producing a sufficient amount of healthy food for the global population in a sustainable manner. We very much welcome the adoption of an ambitious FAO strategy and action plan for 2021-2023 on mainstreaming biodiversity across agricultural sectors. While we appreciate FAO's work done on analyzing the situation around our genetic resources for food and agriculture, we still see opportunities to strengthen the action plan, in particular as regards assisting countries in phasing out agricultural subsidies detrimental to biodiversity, establishing the knowledge base for farmers on biodiversity-friendly techniques and practices by including these in training of trainers programs or extension services, establishing and strengthening farmer-to-farmer learning programs and sharing of local innovations which enhance biodiversity, and fostering local seed exchange to support regional biodiversity. We believe we can and we must transform our food systems to deliver fairer, healthier outcomes for people and planet. This is critical to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, Paris Agreement on climate, and the targets of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. We organic farmers remain at your disposal to contribute to such transformation. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And with that, I've come to the end of the speakers list. So I will now pass the floor to the Secretariat for response. I'll pass the floor to Maria Elena Semedo or whoever she designates. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very good morning to all. I would like to start by thanking all the countries welcoming the plan of action for the implementation of FAO strategy on mainstreaming biodiversity across agriculture sectors. Maybe I would like to recall that this plan of action aimed to implement the biodiversity strategy already approved by the members. And the biodiversity strategy has a vision. And the vision is a world where agriculture and food systems reduce their negative impact on and make the best use of the potential of biological diversity and ecosystem. This to ensure that FAO work is on biodiversity for food and agriculture, as it has been made clear by various interventions. And also in the biodiversity strategy, FAO committed to engage to work with partners, with sectors, and across sectors. And this is the reason why the Director General decided in the new organogram to establish the Office of Climate, Biodiversity and Environment, exactly to be sure that biodiversity is seen as cross-cutting in FAO, mainstreaming across agriculture sectors. We work with all the divisions in FAO, as it has been said, through the focal points, but the office has the responsibility to coordinate and to integrate. And also, we work with other partners, as it has been called our attention, and I would like to assure you that FAO works in close collaboration with UNEP, with the CBD, OIE, and WHO, and we don't duplicate. We create a more complementarity and synergy, and we have been called as the leader agency to work on biodiversity for food and agriculture. And even yesterday, the Secretary General called a summit on biodiversity. The DG was one of the speakers on behalf of several United Nations agencies, and he also called for a close integration between the outcome of the Biodiversity Summit and the Food System Summit to be taking place next year. This to see how we see the interlinkage between food security, nutrition, and biodiversity, mainstreaming biodiversity. I think the other points, we can ensure that the One Health approach is clear on the biodiversity strategy, and I think now more than ever, after COVID-19, where we can see the clear linkage between human, animal, and environment interface. We work in the framework of the extended, how we call it, extended One Health approach, the tripartite approach with the inclusion of UNEP, but also with the CBD, which has revamped the working group on health and biodiversity. FAO is member of this working group, and I think the importance of the wildlife and having a global and integrated approach is more than ever important. We also work on the linkage with biodiversity, with soil, with forests, and all different sectors in a really integrated approach. We'll be continuing this dialogue. The next one will be during the COFO, and after in February in Coffee, to be sure that the forest and the fisheries comments will be fully integrated, and we'll be taking all the comments and this action plan to the 2020 framework. This is one of the reasons we try to discuss the plan of action before, but as everything has been delayed to COVID, it gives us more time to refine the strategy, to include all your comments in a way that we have a consistent contribution to the 2020 framework, and biodiversity for food and agriculture will be coming very clear in this framework. With this, Madam Chair, I would like to give the floor to Eduardo Mansour, the Director of the new Office of Climate, Biodiversity and Environment, to provide more clear response to some of the questions coming from the members. Thank you.
Thank you. Eduardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have much to add at this stage, but to explain the commitment of the new office to work in an integrated fashion in FAO and with the partners, as mentioned by Madame Semedo, to make sure that the strategy that has been approved in the last council and the recommendation that we had to submit the plan of action for the appreciation of the technical committees is going to be fully implemented according to your recommendations. In that sense, Madam Chair, we have recalled the importance for us to receive the written comments that have been mentioned by countries that intervene in this session, for us to respond adequately to their expectations in the plan. I just would like to highlight that the action plan will take the new developments and agreements, including, of course, those related to the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Commission on Genetic Resources, the developments that are coming up at this stage, also due to the difficulties posed by the pandemic. The Council requested us to prepare an action plan for 3 years. And this is why this is an action plan proposed for, a plan of action proposed for 2021-2023. Actually, the actions foreseen for 2021 are very much embedded in the Plan of Work and Budget 2020-2021 of FAO, but several actions proposed for the next biennium, 2022-2023, are still tentative because they will be finalized together with the Plan of Work and Budget for that biennium. So it's very much welcome to have the comments and contributions now. The commitment is very high, and in keeping up with the time, we are looking forward for the opportunity of continuing responding and implementing the action plan, and we welcome the solid comments provided by the members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduardo. I see no requests for the floor, so I will consider that the committee's discussion on this item is complete. We do not have a draft summary at this point, so we'll come back to that. We have 20 minutes left before our break, and we are running out of time, so I am going to move immediately to item 4.1, FAO's Program of Work in Food and Agriculture under the FAO Strategic Framework. The relevant document is COAG 2020/2. The introductory note by the Secretariat was made available on the COAG website. I will open the floor directly for discussion. We will clearly not get through discussion, so we will break at some point for lunch. But again, I would ask members to be as concise as possible. I give the floor to Chile, followed by Brazil. Chile, you have the floor.
Disculpe, señora presidenta, pero
I apologize, Madam Chair, but we had asked two questions and we would like an answer. One referred to the focal points. Have they been appointed? We would like to know whether that's happened at the regional offices and here in FAO. And the other question we had was on the funding for the implementation of the action plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chile. I was premature. We are still on item on biodiversity, so I will refer those questions to Eduardo or Maria Elena. Please take the floor.
Well, of course, the funding, if I may, Madam Semedo, would you like to start?
Go ahead, Eduardo.
Regarding the funding, as you know, there has been a commitment made through the Council for the establishment of posts, and this is included in the current plan of working budget, and we are in the process of filling up the position. There is a possibility of allocating specific funds for activities that are ongoing, that are foreseen in the work plan already, like our contribution to the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration that has already some commitments done. But of course, the plan of action depends on the mobilization of resources and from trust funds, from extra budgetary resources for implementing specific activities. Regarding focal points, they are being appointed inside the FAO with the support of the new structure, the offices and the centers and the work streams, and also some regional offices. But it's a process that's still ongoing. I don't know if I have completed the answer. We also have some resources already allocated from Switzerland and Netherlands in the multi-donor project for the implementation of the multi-stakeholder platform. And we thank very much the contribution received from Switzerland and Netherlands, and we hope that will serve as a trigger for other member countries to contribute for the implementation of the plan of action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduardo. I have a speakers list here, which I think is for item, our next item, if we are complete with that. If there's any members who are actually wanting to speak on biodiversity, perhaps send a chat, but, and I will move you up. But in the meantime, I will consider that we are complete with our biodiversity discussion, and we will now be on item 4.1, Program of Work in Food and Agriculture under the Strategic Framework. And I will give the floor first to Brazil, followed by the Dominican Republic. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. The challenging times that we are living in 2020 has shown us that some priorities do not change. If anything, they became more evident and urgent. COVID-19 has shown us that in difficult times, the most vulnerable suffer the most. The commitments and priority we set in the 2030 agenda stand more indispensable than ever. We need to accelerate actions to end poverty and malnutrition everywhere and to combat inequalities within and among countries. FAO has a special role in this collective journey, especially in the achievement of Objective 2 of ending hunger, achieving food security, and improving nutrition and promoting sustainable agriculture. Therefore, we believe its priorities and strategic objectives must be firmly rooted in the 2030 Agenda. This is especially important as we are entering the United Nations decades of actions to deliver sustainable development goals. COAG's agenda and conclusions will certainly provide an important guidance on how to achieve this. We particularly highlight the importance of promoting the livestock sector contributions to achieving the SDGs. Second, the work developed by FAO in preventing, anticipating, and responding to plant pests and diseases. Third, the need to pay attention to urban food environments in context of an integrated approach with rural areas. Fourth, actions taken towards reducing food losses and waste. Fifth, the importance of enabling smallholders access to appropriate innovation, information system, and advisory service. Six, and working with a wide array of sustainable agricultural practice for food and nutritional security in the context of sustainable food systems for healthy diets for all. Finally, we're certain that our discussions will provide an important basis for the review of the strategic framework and the preparation of the medium-term plan 2022-2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. Dominican Republic, followed by China. Dominican Republic, you have the floor.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Dominican Republic recognizes the results achieved in this strategic framework, as well as its systemic, integral, cross-cutting role, so that we, together with the member states, can achieve the SDGs, in particular SDG 1 and 2. We are pleased to see that the Director General is in the lead in terms of strengthening and consolidating the innovative spirit that should characterize a knowledge-based organization such as FAO. The challenges that we are facing today in the context of the pandemic and the climate crisis, both in developing and in more advanced countries, oblige us to repeat once again that the organization FAO needs the political support of its membership. We are also pleased to see the very special focus placed by FAO on building local capacity, in particular strengthening sustainable food systems and expanding partnerships with a special focus on public-private partnerships and the cross-cutting themes of gender and youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominican Republic. I have China followed by, no. Thank you. I have China followed by the Republic of Korea. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We welcome the report provided by the Secretariat and commend the achievements made by FAO over the past 2 years in the field of food and agriculture. The new program of work expounded on the areas of focus for 2020 and 2021. We support the FAO in strengthening its work in the food and agriculture sector under the strategic framework. especially for enhancing the resilience of food systems, for actively tackling risks related to climate and natural resources, and for enhancing effective control and preventions of APPDs. Finally, we invite FAO to timely report to its member on the program implementation status through multiple channels. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China, for your concise intervention. Korea, followed by Sudan. Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Republic of Korea appreciates FAO for timely presenting this valuable document to COAG. Korea is pleased to hear that FAO led or participated in many important themes such as small-scale food producers and family farmers, climate change, antimicrobial resistance, transboundary animal disease control, etc. And we have some comments as follows. In general, considering the global context and FAO's genuine mandate, my delegation regards 4 priority areas appropriate, and we agree that each area is interrelated as written in the document. In our perspective, the priority A, achieving resilient, sustainable food systems for food security and nutrition for all, is an overarching theme which is not strictly parallel, but covering other 3 priorities. In other words, we consider priority B, C, and D as areas to be focused on the way pursuing the priority A. Furthermore, since this document does not include detailed measures for each priority area, we look forward to hearing major methods to achieve them afterwards. Secondly, with regard to the specific item regarding the global hub on indigenous food systems, we regard it to play a role for the preparation of the UN Food Systems Summit. However, we request FAO to be attentive and avoid of giving some expressions of a few food systems can cover overall food systems. Instead, FAO should highlight good points of each food system respectively and help countries to benchmark or learn from each other regarding those merits. Last but not least, my delegation would like to remind FAO of a phrase, desperate times call for desperate measures. The clock is counting down toward 2030, but dedicated indicators are sliding backward. To make the circumstance worse, we are still in the pandemic with great uncertainties. In this context, we strongly encourage FAO to keenly review current ways of working, particularly including partnership with other agencies and achievements so far in relation to 4 priorities. Thank you, Madam Chair, and over.
Thank you, Korea. Sudan, followed by Indonesia. Sudan, you have the floor.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. We would like to commend the role of FAO in helping countries to achieve SDG 1 and 2. We would like to thank FAO for the hand-in-hand initiative aiming and accelerating rural development and transformation. We all know that the Sudan is prone to floods and the effects of COVID-19. We call on FAO to include the Sudan in the list of the most affected countries. Sudan needs support in infrastructure development to be able to provide access to food to all smallholders. We welcome the fact that FAO is launching an initiative to reduce food loss and waste. We support FAO in trying to reduce the level of food loss and waste, as this has reached 40% in Sudan. Floods and other climate change effects are impacting our conditions in the Sudan. We believe that FAO work with many UN agencies will help improve the situation of local populations, and we would like to commend its leading role in helping rural populations to counter desert locusts and other transboundary pests and diseases like the red palm weevil and the fall armyworm. These pests, unfortunately, are threatening our food security. We hope that fertilizers will be reduced, especially across the various agricultural sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudan. Indonesia, followed by Switzerland. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Indonesia welcomes the positive result of FAO work in the medium-term plan, particularly with the alignment FAO strategic objectives with the 2030 Agenda for SDGs and the importance of FAO's contribution to the repositioning of the UN development system. Overall, Indonesia appreciates the achievements of FAO's work in food and agriculture in 2018-2019, particularly the FAO's effort at the global level in strengthening strategic partnership through platforms and initiatives to promote international cooperation. Indeed, we believe that multi-stakeholders partnership is a key to accelerating progress toward achieving SDGs. Indonesia views that FAO's strategy should be integrated with the development of an innovation strategy of the member countries to ensure a coordinated response to the needs of its members. As such, we can support the FAO's effort in developing strategies, guidelines, and promoting a holistic approach to develop and access appropriate innovation for smallholders and family farmers to enable regional organizations and governments strengthen their policies and increase their investments. In line with the UN approach to build back better, Indonesia urged the needs of FAO to immediately help mitigate the pandemic impacts by the long-term resilience of food system and livelihoods. In relation to that, we support FAO to focus on aligning its development program with countries' needs by identifying policy information and measures adopted by countries through its tools, support low-income countries to mitigate pandemic's impact, especially on women and vulnerable groups, contributing to the mitigation of pandemic impact on global food trade and markets, facilitate risk assessment and early detection of disease emergency, and contain disease spread. In defining priority areas of work of FAO in 2020-2021 and beyond, Indonesia believes that addressing huge data and capacity gaps to support SDG monitoring helps countries align their goal with national and global indicators. Countries need to strengthen the institutional coordination among national data producers and improve their capacity to use SDG indicators in decision-making processes. Madam Chairperson, Indonesia also views that digital innovation in agriculture is essential in enabling member countries to create sustainable agriculture and food system. The implementation of digital innovation will open more opportunities and market access for producers while improving the availability of healthy food for all people. Thus, Indonesia urged FAO to provide a comprehensive program for scaling up capacity development of data and digital innovation to be a top priority to accelerate SDG achievement during 2020-2021. We would also like to appreciate overarching themes proposed under the priority areas of FAO's work in 2020-21 and beyond, as it supports the need to achieve SDGs and the impact of the COVID pandemic on food security and nutrition. Lastly, as mentioned in the strategic framework, Indonesia supports the preparatory process toward the UN Food System Summit in 2021, highlight the importance of inclusive food systems in achieving Sustainable Development Agenda and a more coherent approach to support countries in fulfilling their commitments. The summit is indeed a major opportunity for FAO to project their visibility and delivering its leadership role in achieving the goal. I thank you, Madam Chairperson, and over.
Thank you, Indonesia. This is bringing us up to the lunch break, so I will pause our discussion here. So I have a speakers list as follows: Switzerland, Germany, UK, USA, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Zambia. You will all disappear from the screen when we break for lunch, so when we return from lunch, I will follow this list as I have in the order, although I will ask you to raise your hands again when you come back, but I won't be following the order on the screen until I get to Zambia. After that, any subsequent raised hands will be taken in the order they appear. Thank you very much for your hard work this morning. Coming back after lunch in 1 hour exactly, we will continue our discussion on item 4.1 and bring that to an end. And then we will continue moving through the agenda as laid out in the timetable. Putting in discussions of summaries of previous topics as we can. Please come back ready to work very hard and very efficiently. We have until 5:30 to get through this and the written correspondence documents. A reminder that all the responses on the written correspondence have been posted to the COAG website, so you can look at it there. We have draft summaries, chair summaries for those documents, which we'll be reviewing, but of course there's opportunity to raise additional points then. So with that, have a very good break, lunch, meal of whatever type, and I will see you back in 1 hour at 1 p.m. in Rome. Thank you again.